So today's lesson is about populism. So we got to ask ourselves, what is populism? Your textbook defines populism as a movement in the late 19th century to increase farmers' political power and to work on legislation in their interest. The reality is, this is a response to the fact that people who felt the two major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, weren't doing a good enough job to solve the problems that farmers faced. So what are the problems that the farmers are facing? Well, there's a few of them. One of them is the prices of their goods have fallen significantly. They've increased production in an effort to make more money. The advances in technology have made it easier for them to do this, but the law of supply and demand says if there's more supply, prices go down. So the prices of their goods are lower, they're not able to make enough money. Deflation is occurring in the United States. The U.S. has stopped minting silver coins and printing paper money in order to fight the inflation that was occurring during the Civil War. This lowers the value of money, and so prices are actually going to go down. It increases the value of money, so the prices are going to go down, and this is going to, once again, cause farmers to struggle because they still have loans and mortgages and fixed payments that they need in order to make ends meet. They've made investments in their farms, and they simply do not have the money to pay the bill. So the farmers are upset. They're annoyed. Here's your annoyed farmer. They're annoyed because they feel that the political parties aren't addressing their problems and that the cities and the urban areas are getting all the attention and the businesses are getting the attention, but farmers and rural communities are not. And so they're going to say, what can we do and what can we organize? What kind of groups can we form to try and help us? So the first organization that they form is called the Grange. The Grange is simply a group that is designed to try and educate farmers, form communities, and more power in numbers. Try to convince the government to pass legislation that will help them. One of the things they do is they form these things called cooperatives, which is where farmers are actually going to get together and agree to take some of their crops off the market. And hopefully if they make less of their product, then the prices will go up and they'll make a little bit more money. Unfortunately, a little frowny face here for them, the Grange wasn't large enough, it wasn't a significant enough movement to really make a big difference in farming conditions. So the next organization is called the Farmers Alliance. The Farmers Alliance, formed 10 years later, is basically a group that tries to address the same issues as the Grange, but on a larger scale, kind of more, once again, a power in numbers. They want to form bigger cooperatives. They want to negotiate with railroad companies and try to lower the price that they have to pay to ship their products. Once again, they have a good mentality, but they're not able to fully solve the problems. They simply are not able to affect a big enough change. So we have a double smiley face, double frowny face for the Farmers Alliance. So this is where the farmers really try to step up their game. They say, if we really want to affect political change, we need to form a political party. We'll call it the People's Party, and it becomes known as the Populist Party. It's officially formed in 1890. So a political party, a group of people who try to promote candidates for political office. In this case, try to support those issues that would help farmers in their time of need. There's a lot of carryover between those other organizations. Farmers Alliance members are going to support the populists. Those definitely, they're connected. But importantly, some people look at this as a problem. They think if we're going to be putting our support behind new third-party candidates, then the people we normally would vote for, one of the two major parties, and they traditionally supported the Democrats, they'll get less votes. But as more Democrats continue to fail the farmers, more and more support goes to the populists. So the first populist presidential candidate is named James Weaver, and we can learn a little bit about the populists by taking a look at his platform and what he stood for and what he argued for. First of all, he wanted silver to be turned into coins. He wanted to increase the money supply, the issue we talked about. He wanted a graduated income tax. Basically, that means he wanted people who made more money to pay higher taxes. And perhaps more kind of philosophically, he wanted a stronger government, a government that could fight against big business interests and help the ordinary individuals, or to protect the common people, as they said, from private interests. And by private interests, we really mean large corporations, and big money, as it may be. He ends up losing the election, but he shows that a third-party presidential candidate can get some significant support. So things really change for the populists after 1893, when there's a severe economic panic. The panic is a word that basically means that the economy is kind of going into a nosedive, and people are losing jobs and businesses are going out of business. And when this happens, a lot of people, try to put their money somewhere that it's safe. So a lot of people had government bonds, which is a promise that the government will pay back money that you've given to them. And they wanted to trade them in for gold because they felt that gold is a safer bet than a government bond. The problem was the United States didn't have a whole lot of gold, and this really kind of exacerbated those money supply issues that we've been talking about. There's even less currency available, and so the money supply issue, this gold versus silver issue, really becomes the main political issue in the 1890s. So we see this political issue really divide the Democrats in particular. And this really kind of gives an opening for the populists to kind of try to make their main points. Some Democrats, called gold bugs, believe the American currency should be based on gold. You should only be able to trade in American bonds for gold. It shouldn't be based on silver. We shouldn't be coining silver. Silverites, on the other hand, said, let's solve this problem by coining silver, getting more money back into the economy. So you have this division within the Democratic Party. In 1896, this becomes the biggest issue of the presidential election. The populists, rather than nominating a third-party candidate, they actually nominate the same candidate as the Democrats. So the Democrats and the populists both nominate the same person, William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan supported the idea of coining silver, and so populists are going to join with the Democratic Party in this election. In the long run, if you ask how might this hurt the populists, they're basically saying they're not any different than one of the other main parties. So that's really, something that's going to kind of take away, I think, from the idea that they're really a third alternative. William Jennings Bryan actually gives a really famous speech during the Democratic National Convention called the Gross of Gold speech, and we're going to take a look at that in class. So this election, there's another candidate. There's a Republican, a guy named William McKinley. And here's McKinley on the left and William Jennings Bryan, the Democrat, and the populists on the right. So we kind of see this strange sort of situation where we have two candidates and three parties. So you'd think the guy who had support from two of the three parties would be the winner, but William McKinley is going to end up winning this election. And, this election really does show two different kinds of campaigning. William Jennings Bryan gave hundreds of speeches across the country. We see his campaign map here. He traveled all across the country to all these different cities and tried to spread his message as far and wide as he could. McKinley, on the other hand, he had what was known as a front porch campaign, where he invited people to come to his home and hear him speak about political issues. He's going to end up getting the support of the big businesses who are afraid of populism. The idea of coining more money could weaken their stranglehold over economic control of the country. In addition, McKinley's going to appeal to ethnic minorities. The Democrats are still, of course, very unpopular amongst African Americans in particular, who still have yet to forgive them for their support of slavery and, of course, the racist policies imposed in the South after the Civil War. So those two issues are going to give McKinley the upper hand in the election. So after the election, we say goodbye to populism. During McKinley's term, more gold is found. This increases the money supply, and populism kind of fades away as a third party. They didn't truly address the problems that the farmers face. So We can look back and we can say they were a political movement that failed. But we can also look back and say that they were a political movement that changed the dynamics of politics. They introduced the idea of a powerful third party, and they forced the Democrats in particular to kind of absorb some of their positions, and recognize that if there is a group of people who organize, then they are going to be a group that needs to be listened to. And so even though populists didn't win, they did have an impact on the political debate. But nonetheless, the political party does kind of die out as an official third party. But there are going to be other third parties later on in American history that we can compare it to.